my name is Ninad. I have read a book called Dakshin by Nitin Kushalappa and I liked it a very lot.
Hi Ninad, how are you?
I'm fine.
So, let's start. What do you want to know about Dakshin?
Okay. Can you please tell me a little bit about your childhood and like where you grew up? Did you love books when you were growing up, etc.?
I grew up in Bangalore, and then my summer vacations were with my grandparents in Coog. So, during the summer months, whenever we had vacations, we used to travel to Coog, my sister and I. And I loved books at the time. So we didn't watch TV back then. We didn't watch much TV, and we didn't have smartphones. So there was only books for us. And I used to read a lot when I was a kid. There used to be a borrowing library nearby. So we used to borrow books from there every week. And then we used to, once we are done with these books, we used to borrow something like 3-4 books a week. And then we return the books, then borrow a new set of books. So that was how life was to us. And then when I got my grandparents' place and in school also, there used to be this library of books, etc. So I used to, I used to be nicknamed Bookworm at the time. I used to keep reading books. Yeah, that's basically how my childhood was.
Okay. When did you start writing?
I started writing for myself when I was around 7 years. So at the time I had a best friend called Karthik. So for some reason I thought, I was in the second standard at that time. I thought I'll write a book on him. But that never happened, in fact. Then I used to write at home. My mother writes, so she writes in the Kannada language. She writes in Kodo also. Basically, she writes poetry. So probably I used to watch her write, and I began writing. I used to write in English, and there used to be these children's columns when I was in school. I was in the second standard when I wrote a couple of lines to the Deccan Herald. They had this children's column called Open Sesame. And I used to write regularly to the Deccan Herald. I used to contribute these a couple of lines or so. They used to ask these opinions every fortnight. Like they'll want opinions from children. So if there's some current affairs topic, like for example, back then Leander Pace had got the bronze medal in the Olympics. So then that was a topic of discussion. And such topics used to come up, and kids, we used to send in our opinions, and these used to get published in the newspaper back then. This went on until I was in the 8th standard. Then I took a break at the time, and I think I was in the 5th standard when I started writing poetry. It was like more so it was like I used to write a few rhymes, and I used to send it again to the Deccan Herald. Then I used to send articles to the Times of India as well. They had a children's column called Offspring. So I used to write to them. Again, that was around when I was 11, I think. 11, 12, like 6th standard, 7th standard back then. And I remember writing 2 short stories as well. So one got published in Gokulam. I was around 12 years then, and another got published in the Times of India around the same time. So I've been that's how I started writing. And then later I stopped writing when I was in the 10th standard because my board exams were there. Then again I started writing after I joined college. I think before I joined college, like probably when I was 17, 18. And then my first book, it got published in 2013. So yeah.
Did you study to be a writer?
As a kid, I wanted to be a writer, maybe because I used to read books, and then I used to admire these authors, different authors. So, but I didn't know what I would write. I just knew, for example, I remember when I was in the 2nd standard, I thought I'd write a book on my friend, and then that is what I thought writing is about. You write about yourself, you write about people, etc. Then later, as I kept reading, my interest kept changing. So then I started reading a lot of non-fiction. And then, so it keeps changing. But it's just that I knew I wanted to be a writer, but I didn't imagine myself being a full-time writer. In school, I remember I was in the high school. Then my friends used to make fun of me. They used to say, okay, you'll become a poet and all that. So it's like people look at the economic value. So it's like they thought it's not good to be a poet at that point of time. So yeah, but I knew I'll be a writer, but I also knew that I'll take up another profession. I mean, that it kept changing. Like I wasn't sure about what I'll take up. Then finally, I had decided I'll become a software engineer. So yeah, here I am.
Which was your first book?
My first book was on local history. It was in 2013. It's in fact there were two books which came out at that point of time. I was writing on the history of Cook. Then it was like initially it was 800 pages, and then it grew. It became a big work, in fact. So I had to split it into 4 books, and so my first 4 books were from this work. And yeah, it's my first 4 books are on the history of Cook.
Okay. Other than Dakshin, have you written other books for children?
This is my first book for children. So yeah, in future I see myself. I have some works. I have some. I have written some. I have some material that I've written for children, but they are not complete at this stage. So I see they will get published eventually at some point of time.
Okay. How did you get the idea of writing Dakshin? Did any person or incident inspire you to write the book?
Dakshin, I was interested in folklore since long. So I think for me, this interest began during my childhood. And this interest, it was like it wasn't my main interest. It was one of my interests, and I wasn't aware of this. Like I wasn't aware of the hype behind folklore. This began when, as a kid, we used to be told bedtime stories. So then we used to be told there were mythological stories, there were folk stories, and we used to hear them all from me, my sister, my cousins. We used to hear it from my grandfather, then uncle, mother. Like there were storytellers in our family. So those they were basically bedtime stories, but a few of them were folk tales. They were told from generation to generation. Then later I started reading folk tales. I think it was in 2003. There was this book called Patol Palame. It was a translation into English. So it was a collection of folk songs, and it was from the Kodwa language, written in the Kannada script. This was the original was compiled in 1924. So basically, there was this police inspector who used to go on horseback in those days, and he used to go from village to village. And if he heard a song that was interesting, he used to contact the folk singer, and he used to bring the folk singer home, give him food, and then he used to make the folk singer sing the song, and he would write it down at the time because there were no recorders, nothing. So this he compiled all of these songs, and he got it published in 1924. This was translated by his grandchildren in 2003 into English. So it is after the translation that the book became popular again. Until then, it was forgotten for a long period of time. So when I read this book, I was inspired. I came to know, okay, there are so many folk tales, there are so many folk songs from Cook, which I was not aware of. Then later, I was reading A.K. Ramanujan as well. So I was reading his tales. There's this Flowering Tree and other stories, and many of his other books. So I was fond of his methods as well. He categorizes folk tales into the EAT classification, and there's a science behind folklore and its collection as well. So I began to read all that, and but I didn't know that I will write. I will be retelling folk tales at some point of time. I just knew that I like folk tales and used to keep reading it. Then I saw that there's a lot of, I think it was 2018, 2019, I realized that there are many uh, books on folk tales coming out in the market. So at that point of time, I was in touch with, my publishing journey, it's not been easy. I've been writing to publishers, various publishers, not hearing back from them. I'd been writing to book agents, not hearing back from them. So in 2018, I got in touch with Suhail Mathur, my present book agent. So he's from the Bookmakers. So I had sent him one work of fiction which got published earlier, The House of Avadh, got published 3 years ago. So at that point of time, he said that there's a requirement for a collection of folk tales, and he wanted regional folk tales. I was like, I was interested. He had placed one book called The Greatest Folk Tales of Bihar for a friend, Nalin Verma. So, and then there were other folk tales also from Marwar. Then I had read books from various regions, Sikkim, Northeast, and all. At that point of time, I had to choose a region. My first choice was Karnataka. Then later I realized, like even Suhail also realized, that there were not many folk tales from South India. So we thought we'll collect folk tales from South India and we'll make a book on that. And these talks happened in 2019. He got me in touch with Puffin in 2020. I signed an agreement with them, and then the pandemic happened. Things got delayed, and it was supposed to be released in September initially, 2022. Then again it got delayed all because of the pandemic, and then finally it was out in February 2023. So yeah, that's the journey of the book Dakshin.
How many stories did you originally find? How did you end up choosing just the 15 of them?
I found something like around 30 stories, so 35 stories, and yeah, we went through the stories. Some of them, the word length was, we are like, in the publishing world, we tend to be a little, we think about word count and all that. So it's like the story should be of the right size. If it's not of the right size, it's not considered for publication. So a number of these stories were not of the right size. And also we wanted this to be a children's book. So 15 of them were tales for children, and the others were like, you can say they were boring stuff and stuff for older audiences. So we had to come down to 15 stories, and finally these 15 stories made it into the book.
Which is your favorite story in the book?
I like all 15 stories. It's because I wrote them, so I cannot take a favorite as such. Like it's like a parent who has 2 kids, and you ask the parent, who's your favorite kid? It's a difficult choice. So for me, it's a difficult choice to say which is my favorite story among these 15. So I like all 15 of them, and yeah, a few of them might be a little more. I like a few of them a little more than the rest, but yeah, basically I like all of them. So, I would always recommend children to read all 15 tales.
I mostly like the Punyakoti and the tiger story.
Okay, the cow and the tiger. Yeah, that's also a favorite. I liked the story a lot when I was a kid also. So I heard the story when I was a kid, and this was in Kannada, so I translated it into Kannada. There are different versions of this story. In fact, I am aware that I think there's a Konkani version also of the same story. This Kannada story that I had, the song that I had, Punyakoti song. So then I translated it into English, word by word. When I did this, this was some years ago. I was not aware that I'll be writing this book. I translated it and I kept it aside. Then one fine day, when the idea of this book came up, I thought of the translation, retrieved it, and I put it into the book. So yeah, that's also one of my favorites. I'm glad you like it.
What else do you like doing?
I like watching movies. I like traveling. I like reading books. I surf on the internet. There are many things. I like eating. I like a lot of things. So reading books is definitely there. For me, reading books is important because otherwise it's like I get my material to write from my own ideas and from books that I read. So yeah,
I read that you are an app developer. Can you tell me some apps that you have developed?
Most of my apps, they are for the iPhone. I have made one Android app. I started developing apps in 2009. So that year, 2009, 2010, I had made 11 apps. They were all puzzle game apps back then. So for example, there was this Sudoku app. So the app that I was making, these apps, they are teamwork. We have a team. Like I develop the app, and sometimes I develop it alone. Sometimes there are colleagues who help me develop it, and we write the code. We program. I program the code, and then there are people who design the app. There are creative people. They are like they are artists. They do all the artwork for the app. Then there are people who do the quality assurance. They test the app. They see that the app is good. It doesn't break. It works well. People like it and all that. So there are many apps I made, and one app was this app called Color Sudoku. So this is we used this app. The concept was that you are aware of Sudoku, right? You play with Sudoku, the numbers.
Yes.
So instead of numbers, we used colors in that. We used different colors, 9 different colors, and you had to put that in that. So I used to make puzzle game apps back then. Then later, for the next 3 years, I was making some business apps. It's like survey apps. So there are different clients, and there will be requirements. There will be people who want apps, and then we make apps for them. And after that, again, I made I made 2 game apps. So simple, basic game apps. That was in December for Christmas. That was for the audience in the West, in USA and Europe. And there were some other business apps, utility apps, and scanning apps, etc. So I've made 22 apps, and these apps, they need to be maintained. I have to maintain them. You need to keep it in the market. So there's work involved in all that.
What is your next book going to be?
My next book, it's again a collection of folk tales, and it's with my book agent. So it should be out. It should be out in some time. I mean, I'm told it might be out the end of this year. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's definitely a collection of folk tales. Also, I have works of fiction, like some books I have written which are not complete. There are books for children, and hopefully I'll complete them soon, and yeah, you should be able to read it.
Okay. What kind of books do you like to read?
I read a lot of these days. I read a lot of non-fiction. I read fiction as well. I used to love classics, and I used to read a lot of classics. I have a list of books that I need to read. I need to make time and read them. When I was your age, I used to read a lot of children's books. So there was Ned Blyton. Then there was this book called Just William, and the William Brown series by Richmond Crompton. This was about a naughty boy called William in England. Then in those days, most of these English books, they used to be from foreign authors. Like there were not many Indian authors. There was Ruskin Bond, but otherwise there were not many. Now, like these days, we have Sudha Murthy. Then we have many other authors. There's Rija Radhakrishnan. There's Anand Neelakantan. There are many other authors these days. But then there were very few children's authors from India. So we used to look out for foreign authors. There was Roald Dahl. I read his BFG, Big Friendly Giant. That was one book I liked. Then there was Fantastic Mr. Fox, another book. So these were all.
I didn't.
You have read that? Okay. Yeah. So I like those books. Then there was books by Dr. Seuss. The Cat in the Hat. That was a very first book. That was.
Even I have read that also.
And a few other books also. Then Ned Blyton, there was the famous 5 series, Secret 7.
I have it, but I have not read it still.
Okay. Then there were I didn't read all of her books. Like there were many that I didn't read, but I started reading her naughty books, and that was when I was very young. Maybe I started reading books with. I mean, those were my first books, I think. I used to borrow it from the library nearby, and I was maybe 5, 6 or something at the time. Read it and give it back. Then later, when I grew up, there was Famous 5, Secret 7, these children's detective books that I used to read. And then after that, I started reading a lot of classics.
Who are your favorite authors?
There are many favorites. I didn't answer your question. You asked me like, what am I reading currently? I think that's what you asked me at that time. I'm reading a few history books at the moment. There's books by Manu Pillai, and there's a book by Anirudh Kanish Sethi. It's called The Lords of the Deccan. I'm reading that right now, and they are among my favorite authors at the moment. There's I like Ruskin Bond. There are many other authors also. I used to read Shashi Tharoor's columns a long time ago. Then Ramchandra Guha's columns also in the newspapers, weekly columns. And there are many authors. And I love classics. Like there's always, for example, Shakespeare. It's like you have to keep rereading it. You won't have enough of it. And there are many others. I would like to read a lot of Indian authors, especially I'm thinking of trying to read a lot more Kannada authors also.
Can you recommend some books for me and young readers like me?
There are, compared to my generation, your generation, it's a lot more fortunate because you have a larger set to collect from. To choose from. There are many children's books coming out now. So there's I'm sure everyone is aware of Ruskin Bond, Sudha Murthy. Then there are many others. I'm not sure how popular these. Do you read Ned Blyton and all those old books?
Ned Blyton, I don't know. I read it.
You said that you have Famous 5. I think,
but I've not read.
Okay. So those are also good. Then Roald Dahl and Dr. Seuss and all those were popular when we were children. And you should definitely. I would recommend that you read as much as you can, and you should decide on your own what is your favorite. Because as you read, as you keep your mind open and you read as many children's books as you can, you'll at one point of time come to know what is your favorite book, who are your favorite authors, and you should likewise you should keep reading, make your choices and keep reading. There are many right now. There's also there's Devdutt Patnaik series coming out. Then that's for children, and definitely in the years to come, a few of my books will also be out. So I would recommend you children to read my books as well.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope I've cleared all your doubts and I've answered all your questions.
Yes.
I had a good time, and
Even I had a good time.
thank you, Ninad, for your wonderful interview. Thank you, all of you viewers who are watching this. Thanks to the bookmakers, my book agents. Thanks to Puffin Books. Thanks to Rupa Baliga, House Full of Books. Thanks to all of you. Thank you again.
Thank you.